This episode is sponsored by DroneWorks Ireland, your go-to place when it comes to buying a drone, repairing a drone, and also when you need professionals to carry out any aerial work you may need. Check out their website at www.droneworksireland.ie. You're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. So on today's show, I'm going to be joined by former Galway hurler Tony Óg Regan to take a look back on Galway's 121 to 116 defeat to Tipperary in the opening round of the National Hurling League. Despite defeat for Galway, a number of positives for Micheál Donoghue and his side to take heading into this weekend's clash against Cork, with so many younger players stepping up at the weekend. And then in part two of the show, I'm going to be joined by Denis Hurley of the Echo to get the Cork view on things this weekend and what challenge Cork will pose this weekend, now coming up for Galway at 7 o'clock in Pearse Stadium. The University of Galway are into the Fitzgibbon Cup quarter-final, and they're facing Setu Waterford in the quarter-final at 7:30 in Dangan, and there's a large number of Galway men involved in the University of Galway side of things. ATU Galway, they narrowly missed out last week after a defeat to Mary and the earlier defeat to Setu Waterford. That sent them into relegation. So as we're recording, they're playing TUS Midwest in the relegation semi-final, and they'll be looking to win that to retain their Fitzgibbon Cup status. I must say I was at the game between Mary and ATU Galway, and ATU Galway, in fairness, gave it some rattle. 3 goals from Darren Shaughnessy 3 days after playing in the All-Ireland final for Loughrea, and he had Killian Trayers, Roy Burke and Oisin Lohan all playing for them as well. All three of them men part of the Galway senior hurling panel this year. On the Mary side of things, there was a good amount of Galway representation. Dara Walsh from Turlough in goals. The two Lawlesses, Owen and Connor in the full-back line, Dara Whelan in midfield with Donnacha Campbell from Capitagal and Matthew Rosengrave from Beha was on the Mary panel there as well. I'm just going to take a look at the Fitzgibbon Cup panel, and just for people who aren't aware of the Galway representation. So the following players are on the University of Galway and Fitzgibbon Cup panel: Joshua Ryan, Clarenbridge; Ben O'Donovan, Gort; Mark Hardyman, Athenry; Gavin Lee at Clarenbridge; Daniel Comer, Kilnadima Leitrim; Ian McGlynn, Kilcaniron; Darren Erie, Castlegar; Tiernan Lean, Craughwell; Liam Lean, Clarenbridge; Craig Thomas, Castlegar; Ruben Davitt, Ormore Mary; Dermot Daverin, Mike Cullen; Patrick Burke, Ormore Mary; Kieran Whelan, Ormore Mary; John Cosgrove, Sarsfields; Colin Cunningham, Mike Cullen; Michael Malloy, Abhinac Moy; Jack Barrett, Port Pierces; Shane Fitzpatrick, Teen Aberdeenry; Bertie Kane, Rahu Newcastle; Owen Feeney, Athenry; Luke McInerney and Cullen Clean, both who were Cullen Clean obviously playing for Loughrea, and Luke McInerney, who was part of the Loughrea panel as well. So both of them men could potentially be back on the University of Galway's squad now. And Aina Daverin and Mike Cullen. Frank Lohan, who's done a lot of work out in Ormore Mary, he is the University of Galway Fitzgibbon Cup manager. Just in terms of post-primary schools hurling then, Cork Community School and Pearse Stadium were due to play in the semi-final on Tuesday afternoon, but it has got postponed, and it will now take place this coming Thursday in the Connacht GA Centre of Excellence between those two schools. Rifles have already beaten St. Bridget's of Loughrea in a derby there, 320 to 115. So the winner of Gort and Athenry on Thursday will play Rifles in the Connacht A post-primary schools hurling final there. In terms of Senior B, Portumna Community School take on Claren College Athenry in the Senior B Hurling Championship semi-final at 11 o'clock in the Connacht GA Centre of Excellence. In terms of the second, I'm just looking here now at the fixtures. In terms then of the second Senior B Hurling Championship semi-final fixtures, St. Coombe's Castle Blakeney, they take on Holy Rosary College and Montbellier. The game here is down for Thursday, the 5th of February, but there is a venue to be decided. In terms of Senior C, Roscommon CBS take on St. Killian's New Inn in the Senior C semi-final, and that's at 11 o'clock, and it's fixed for Ballinasloe. Then just in terms of a second semi-final, well, actually, in terms of that competition, Clonfert College they're waiting in the final. So the winners there of St. Killian's New End and Roscommon CBS will play Clonfert College in the Connacht Senior C final. That's how the post-primary schools competitions are developing at the minute. But as I mentioned earlier on, there University of Galway taking on Setu Ward for a chance to go into the Fitzgibbon Cup semi-finals there, and obviously the Fitzgibbon Cup finals and Sigerson Cup finals have been fixed for Croke Park. But I'm now going to bring in Tony Óg Regan in part one of the show, as I mentioned, to look back on Galway and Tipperary. Then in part two of the show, we'll have Denis Hurley from the Echo. And Denis is obviously a Cork man, and we'll be looking ahead to Galway, Cork. So it was a defeat for the Galway hurlers in the opening round of the National Hurling League, where they just came up short against All Ireland champions Tipperary. But in fairness, a lot to be encouraged by, particularly with the younger players impressing at the weekend. I'm delighted to be joined by Tony Óg Regan to look back on Galway's defeat to Tipperary. Um, Tony, as I mentioned there, there's a lot to be positive, even if you take it back to 12 months previously, where we were comprehensively beaten by Tipperary in Pearse Stadium. To see so many young lads get a chance and really take their opportunity, I think all Galway hurling supporters were quietly optimistic coming away from Semple Stadium on Saturday evening.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. Anyone I've spoken to were very positive in terms of the team performance and the effort and application levels, and lads are cruising really well in tough conditions against a fairly strong tip team on the evening too as well.
Um, Looking at, I suppose, the younger fellas in particular who took their chance. Jason Rabbit, it's safe to say he's old school. For a lot of people, they were reminded of, I suppose, Joe Rabbit at the edge of the square, but particularly Jason Rabbit at the edge of the square. The way he was able to take ball and really grow into that game was really impressive, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think his ball winning ability is probably a standout feature. We probably haven't had someone of that height and ball winning ability for a while. I think watching back the match again, I think it was probably into maybe the 25th minute where he had his first possession, and people are still talking about his impact, So I think everything that kind of went into him, and he didn't get that amount of supply, but a lot of good stuff came off it in terms of score creation, and he's very good vision on the ball and bring other lads into play, and he can score himself as well. So, yeah, I think it was a really positive first start for Jason, and plenty to build on for himself.
Particularly Aaron too in the corner. I know he probably scoring wise didn't have the return he usually had, but in fairness, it was still great to see that he was willing to constantly work hard and even go, I suppose, deeper at stages to get on the ball as well.
Yeah, I think he showed probably different sides to his game the last day that are probably required at senior level in terms of the amount of work rate you have to bring to it in terms of tracking back and tackling, and there was a lot of dirty ball that had to be completed for the last day, and if you didn't bring an edge to it, you get blown out of it. So he probably had to adapt his game more than the rest of the players, and showed a real good sign to himself in terms of him willing to do that donkey work. And we all know the scoring side of his game, but senior hurling requires a lot more, and he definitely brought plenty of that in spades.
Darren Erie, two on the wing, finished up with 2 points at wing forward. Um, he brings a great bit of pace to the half forward line, I suppose, willing to break the line, and even I suppose he finished with 2 points, but he had one wide, and even after he got that wide, he was willing to take on another shot and really grew into the game as well.
Yeah, got two outstanding scores in the conditions, I think both from near the sideline, and again, another player just shows real athleticism, has really good vision on the ball. I think trying to do the right thing for the most part in terms of bringing other players into play when the shot isn't on. And, I think he played that modern wing forward role really well for us. And again, a really positive start for him to build on for round two. And, lots to look forward to there in terms of his potential.
There's obviously a challenge, Tony, isn't there, for all of these younger players coming in to, I suppose, take their opportunity. But it did really seem like on Saturday night that they weren't really phased by the opportunity that presented it itself. They were just willing to go and take it, and it seems like that's what they did on Saturday night.
Yeah, it looked like the group have a good bit of work done in terms of their organization, Paul. Like, from a defensive point of view, I think we really look very clear on what we're trying to do in terms of defending without the ball and with the ball, then what we're trying to do as when we're building the play. And, it's a support play amongst each other, the ball to hand, the lines are running. It was very, very good. And you could see there was a lot of cohesion from front to back and back to front as well. And, I thought our pressing game then were tackling well in twos and threes. And no one was left isolated. So it was probably defensively one of the best I've seen from Galway for a while now, with conditions and everything, it obviously slowed down the ball and the attacks and stuff like that. So it made it easier to get bodies in around. But, I don't think we coughed up any major goal chances. And, we snuffed out danger quite quickly if there was a break through the middle. Whereas, maybe in the last couple of matches, and particularly in Championship, we were probably coughing up 7, 8 goal chances, and it was quite easy to turn us and run down the middle channel and create overloads and goal chances. So, defensively, I think there was a huge improvement there in terms of the collective and how we were defending as a unit, and obviously that starts up front then in terms of the willingness to get around the pitch and get in tackles and slow down the ball, the tip we're hitting in. And, I think the forward line were very honest in terms of that. And there seemed to be a good organisation in terms of where they were pressing and when they were pressing. And, they didn't allow Tip to really build good quality ball to their inside line.
One player I was looking at before the game, Killian Traves, he had a really impressive World Cup, in fairness to him, but to be given the Galway number three jersey this year, and I think maybe what people forget is obviously he played last year against Clare and then he got a sort of nasty injury that kept him out for most of last season, but to be only coming from last year's under 20 team, and he's had a really impressive club campaign with Turlock as well, but slotted in really seamlessly at fullback.
Yeah, absolutely. Not an easy position, and like really impressive on the night in terms of his aerial ball winning. His ability to break the tackle and then get his head up, and his distribution out of hand was very, very good. And he was disciplined enough in the tackle too. When he was beaten to the ball, he was good at standing up the man and forcing him to shoot outside. And I don't think Oisin O'Donoghue would fancy meeting them again. So that's all you can ask on your first day out to be, very competitive in that way. And, I think he showed he has real potential in that full back berth or near across the full back line. And, I hadn't realised that. I'd obviously seen him at half back a bit with Turlock Moore and obviously with Galway last year in his debut with Clare. So hopefully he can stay injury free now and get a good run on it during the league and build himself into that team.
For all these young fellas who were really impressed at the weekend, do you think even now from Michael's and the management perspective, they're obviously going to have highs and lows throughout this league campaign. They're going to have good days where they're impressed, but they're going to have maybe days as well where they are quieter. But is it nearly about Galway letting that happen, and even these 6 games they get in the league, that's where like they'll really develop as senior intercounty hurlers?
Yeah, listen, it's a hugely important block for Galway in particular. Like, if you've a bad run of 4 or 5 games here in the league, it's very hard to turn around then in terms of championship. You have a short enough turnaround. I know Leinster mightn't be deemed as competitive as other provinces, but you want to start off with you're setting down a good statement and marker from game one and, getting into, first off, been very competitive and then, trying to improve on last year in terms of winning more games in the league. would build that momentum and confidence going into championship. And I think, the experienced lads would need to see that as much as the younger lads, that, we're going in the right direction. And, we're not just competitive in one or two games, we're competitive across the board. And, we're better in certain areas, whether it's around our puckouts or tackling up top or score creation. And, you could see those snippets had improved even from last year's league in terms of that. So, like, that trend will need to continue if we're going to be very competitive this year. And I think it's for the whole squad to start again today. And it's a new week, and you gotta never mind the next game. It's about the next session and getting yourself right for that, and building yourself up again for a huge, intense, energy sapping game again that's required at this level in terms of this time of the year and the conditions.
In fairness, even if you look back to the first half, the sides go in 9-9 at the break. If Galway probably do look back at that, obviously Aaron Island's goal chance was a big chance in that first half. Great hook from Cathal O'Reilly, in fairness from the Tipperary defender. It was nine wides in the first half, and obviously for conditions, and you can account for some of that, but and creating those opportunities will have to be a pleasing aspect, but probably will have regrets too, maybe in the first half about some of their, I suppose, inefficiency in front of goals.
Yeah, it's definitely a stat, whatever, 50% around the first half. But like, I don't think last year we were creating as many of those chances, particularly in, those tougher league fixtures where we lost by 10 or 12 points. So that's a real positive. I think we'd over 35 scored in chances, and that's where you need to be at this level where you're up at close to 40 scored in chances. So that shows that the style of play is working, and we're winning enough possession, and we're taking the shots on. And I don't think too many of them are wrong decisions, just probably execution on the night, first day out, wet ball, tip tailed a good bit off to the right hand side in the first half as well. So definitely something to improve on. And, I think even Aaron will learn a bit from his goal chance, and maybe, come across the defender before he strikes to, either get knocked over for a penalty or cut your man's line, run out, and then he's just a clear finish 1v1 as well. So he learned from that, at senior level, that the defenders, are that bit sharper and that bit quicker and that bit cuter. And, you learn from those experiences the more often he's put into them at this level.
In fairness, you could see all about, I suppose, Guy's character and what was building on Saturday night. Tip come out straight after the second half. Andrew Ormond, Darren McCarthy, Jake Morris, and put them 12-9 in front. And maybe as Galway, we were starting to get a slight bit worried, but it showed everything about the character, the way Rabbit's able to get the ball to Rory Burke. And in Galway, we've all known about Rory Burke's potential, but what a finish for the goal.
Yeah, listen, it was a great response, Paul, as you highlighted there. We had a slow start to the second half. Hadn't even a shot off, I think, in the first couple of minutes. And, Tip put on that 3 points in a row, and you're kind of wondering what's the response here. And, it was a really, really positive response. And that's what you want to see in the team, that we don't allow that to go to 4, 5, and 6. And the next thing, in those conditions, that's a hard thing to peg back. But, really took the game by the scruff of the neck. Particularly that goal was a great team score. I think Daniel Loftus started on the wing from a short puck out, and broke a tackle and popped it over the head to Jason. And Jason, could have taken the easy point, but obviously got the call coming through the middle from Rory. And it was a super finish into the ground on a wet surface into the corner. And Kevin All-Star goalkeeper, very little chance on the night. And I think Galway had a good control of the game then for the next kind of 5 or 10 minute period. And we're well value for whatever was around a 2 or 3 point lead at that stage.
Miall obviously referenced the free count after the game, Tipperary having 11, Galway having 4. I think you could sort of understand him in fairness, I suppose, his assessment of it, because it did seem at some stages that maybe Tipperary did get a few soft frees, and maybe when Galway had those chances higher up in the pitch, maybe they didn't get some of those frees.
Yeah, and I think you'd have to look at those and just see, is there something we can do in our control around that. I think particularly at times we probably give the referee, a bad picture in terms of maybe pulling a bit high in terms of our hands and our hand position and stuff like that. And when we ran at, we're probably fouling a bit too soon rather than getting moving our feet and getting our body positioned in a good area. So I think defensively we kind of have to take responsibility for our tackle technique and reduce some of those frees where in wet conditions we need to be forcing lads outside and taking shots outside rather than taking a lazy tug or a lazy pull when we had bodies back and we had numbers back and there was probably no need to do it. Probably in our own forward line, we could probably learn a bit from tip lads in terms of how direct they were in their running and taking on the man and forcing defenders to maybe make that call in terms of pulling them down and reviewing back the game. Maybe our forwards didn't maybe go as hard directly at the goals to earn those frees. So you'd have to give Tip a bit of credit. Yes, there's probably a bit of interpretation there with the referee as well, and yes, there's probably tackle technique we can improve on. And they're the lessons I think a younger team and the management will take out of it and try to bring into the next round of games in terms of the defensive side of it and the attacking side of it.
Darius Dakelum obviously gets the goal and Tipperary add on a few points and probably just finish that bit stronger in the end to get past Galway by 5 points then.
Yeah, but again with the goal, it came from a long puck out, which on a wet evening we should be dealing with. I think the ball broke through. It should be stopped in the air either by a hurler or hand, and Tip get a couple of runners onto the break, and that creates the overlap and the goal. So again, stuff in our control there. We can be stronger and better on, even if we don't win that ball in the air, that it's stopped in some way and not going through our half back line. And if it does go through our half back line, that someone is at the back of that break. And I think they'll be the things that, defensively we'll be looking at improving on. And, obviously from there, then the shot is probably at a good distance out and maybe Darroch, if he holds his position on the line, maybe has an easier save from, a further distance back from the ball, but he probably expected the forward maybe to bring it in closer and then he was right to come out and rush it, but Darroch just hit it early and maybe picked up that Darroch had left his line and there was space then to target. So, again, that'll be stuff I think the management and the goalkeeper will be going through in terms of can we do a bit better on those situations if they pop up again during the year, like.
Plenty of positives to take away from that performance for Galway, and as well, I think Saturday night we probably began to see a sort of different game plan. The ball was ran through the lines a lot more. Maybe in the past we've seen aimless ball into that full forward line, but you could tell, as you mentioned earlier on, Galway have a lot of work done, and maybe I suppose that style of play and game plan is something they've worked really hard on, is what it looks like.
Yeah, listen, it's still hard to call running into the first
Mm.
league match, and obviously the pressure, you know, coming out with the ball wasn't as high as a championship match. We seem to have plenty of options across our half back line and midfield there where we could pick lads out. Maybe that was down to, really good movement, or maybe, caught Tip by surprise a bit as well. But, there definitely seemed to be an emphasis there of getting two or three passes through the hands before we struck inside or before we, played our half forward line a bit more frequently as well. And I think that change of emphasis was probably needed based off last year where we probably reverted a bit to long ball at times to, three v ones in our full forward line and we're ending up getting really punished for that. So I think that change will really suit the Galway style and the players that we have and I think hitting better quality ball into our inside line and using our half forward line more frequently will help the overall team too in terms of attacking and defending together as well. So hopefully lads continue to show that bravery in possession and continue to use that kind of smarts when with the ball to, find those free options that will be there when you have half forwards coming back and, you should be able to create, plus ones in different areas.
It's a real changing of the guard now, Tony, in terms of potentially what a starting 15 is going to be coming down the line. Conor Whelan, Brian Cannon, Keenan Fahey obviously weren't involved in the 26. Hopefully they could be back on the pitch soon. Loughrea lads as well to come back into it. So still plenty of options to come back into this as well.
Yeah, and I think it's probably the first time you could say maybe in a year or two that there's uncertainty around the selection and there's looks like there's going to be really healthy competition and I think that's what we're crying out to. It kind of felt there for a while that it was probably easier. Um, harder to get off a Galway team than on it. There just didn't seem to be that panel depth, that panel competition, and looking at Saturday night, I think that's where the panel look to be at the moment. And hopefully those young lads can really keep driving on. And the fellas you mentioned there coming back, that they're under pressure now to get a jersey. And if Conor Whelan, Brian Concannon, Keenan Fahey, Kevin Cooney, and these lads are chomping at the bit trying to get into a team, that really adds to a really healthy environment, and that's where you need to get to if you're going to be competitive in Leinster Championship and an All Ireland series. That you have that fight for positions, and it raises everyone's standards. If we all get comfortable as human beings, if you feel your jersey is secure, certain players will pull back a bit in terms of application and effort levels. Other fellas will be self-driven enough to police their own standards and keep trying to improve, and other lads will need a crack at the whip in terms of been dropped at different stages to get a response out of them. So I think the more internal competition there is for places, the better it is for the state of the team, and where the performance can lead to then during the summer.
It's obviously a nice start for going the league campaign. Tip last weekend, Cork now coming to Pearse Stadium on Saturday night. It focuses the mind, but it does feel like maybe it's important now for Galway to go and get a result against Cork, because if you consider it, um, there's a bye and then you have the Fitzgibbon weekend. So after this, Cork game won't be back in action for 3 weeks again in the league.
Yeah, listen, I think they have to be as a group targeting a win this weekend. What's the point sitting after two games with two losses and, just, I don't think anyone wants to be, well done on your effort or, well done on your performances. They probably want to get at least 2 points on the board from the first two games to give them a chance of, being competitive in the division. And, Cork looked extremely sharp hurling wise and movement wise and structure wise the last day. So, it's going to be a huge test from a team that were, in the last two All Ireland finals and have a point to prove themselves. So, it'll give Galway a real uh, idea of where they're at now as a group, and they're going to have to be 100% ready and up for it, because Cork are going to come with, a huge energy and a huge level of performance, and we need to see where we're at as a group in terms of that too. Like,
Yeah, obviously, a result as well, even you take the positives from the performance against Tipperary, but a result against Cork can be huge as well here.
yeah, listen, it'd be a hugely, positive sign if they put in a huge performance in Cork and got a result, and you have 2 points then, as you said, going into the break. It just kind of galvanizes everyone for the next kind of 2 week training block or 3 week training block, whatever it might be, and it's something to use as a reference point during the year that you've beaten, All Ireland finalists for the last 2 years and league and Munster champions as well. So, it just adds the confidence and the feeling that we're on the right track here, like, so I think it's a really important game for Galway again to target in terms of being on it.
Do you think maybe Michal might even throw in a couple of more young lads that didn't see action now against Cork this weekend?
Potentially, I would think he'd be hoping to kind of be as consistent as possible and rewarding good performances and good attitude. So I wouldn't expect to see too many changes. Obviously Darren Marcy is probably out, I'd say. So again, it's probably just looking at who came through, the weekend in terms of muscle soreness and tightness and stiffness, and maybe a couple of lads involved in Fitzgibbon this week as well. So you have to be kind of cognizant of load there as well, and freshness, because Cork will probably be coming fully stacked in terms of freshness. So you have to get that balance right. But I'd expect 11 or 12 of the same names again from Saturday night, and keeping a consistency with that. And if one or two fall out, it's probably due to just managing their load, or injuries or soreness, or that aspect. And maybe a couple of lads might be showing their hand this week too in terms of Fitzgibbon form that will be rewarded. So yeah, there's probably a consistency there of 11 or 12 spots, and maybe you might see one or two changes.
Devastating for Darren Marcy, wasn't it? Your name go Ireland captain, and you could even see the way the ankle just gets stuck, and you knew he wasn't going to play on after that.
Yeah, and he's had a lot of tough luck with injuries throughout his senior career, so you just hope it's a short-term little dart or twist and maybe a 2 to 3 week job, and it's not all lost. Obviously there's a huge amount of hurling still to be played, so wish him well with the recovery, and it'd be great to get him back on the field as captain, and drive it on from there again.
A question came in from a listener. Do you think Hall will uh, release some of these players back to the 20s, or they'll stay with the seniors? I think on that point, you could see really with Tipperary last year, Sam O'Farrell, Darren McCarthy, Robert Doyle, these players played under 20 and senior, and I think they're a prime example that Galway could do that if it's managed correctly. And even going back to last year, talking to Fergal Healy before the under 20s kicked off, there seemed to be a great relationship there between the 20s and senior management, and I'm sure it's no different either with Gavin there this year now and Micheál as senior manager.
Yeah, listen, I think those discussions will be happening, and be happening throughout the week, and the months and the years ahead. Like, and I think that will only add to the quality of the under 20 squad. The more lads that are up training with the seniors and getting that exposure, like Aaron and Jason did there the weekend. So, yeah, I'd say Gavin will be quietly pleased that they're getting game time up there and they're getting that exposure, and I'm sure he'll have access to the lads at the right time too, that they're able to fit into the organization and the style that the 20s are building with as well. And they're to build those relationships within their own team as well. So yeah, I'd say there'd be a dipping in and out at different stages, and they'll be involved with their own under 20s in terms of preparations at different stages of the season as well. So they just have to see how things kind of pan out when it gets to the business end with both squads.
What do you think's Galway's target in the National Hurling League this year?
Listen, I think first off, it's probably to get a couple of really strong performances in, like losing, I think, 3 games last year by, somewhere in the region of 10 to 12 points. Like that would not what you'd be looking for in terms of competitiveness. So I think, win a couple of fixtures, and within the score, or 5 or 6 points of the top teams at the moment. Your Tips, your Corks, you know, potentially that'd be a good signpost for us in terms of the season ahead. And I think it's also developing the team and the squad, and getting definitely 11 or 12 positions nailed down by the time you come out of the league block, and having a couple of positions up for grabs then come championship is no harm as well. But having a really good idea of your back line, and your top 2 or 3 lads come in there, and obviously same in midfield and same in your forward line, and getting as much game time and minutes into the whole squad, and having them prepared for that first round of the Leinster then when it comes around. So there's probably a good few measures of success there, Paul. Um, Obviously then the team would probably have their targets in terms of what they want to retain off their own puck out, and their tackle intensity, and the amount of scores they're creating, and their efficiency, and making sure that that trend is fairly solid in terms of a target per game, and trying to hit those markers that by the end of the league we know where we're at in terms of our puck out routines and restarts. And we're a hard working team when we don't have possession, and we know we're creating enough scoring chances to win games and taking enough of them too.
It is really where Galway are at currently. You feel it's just about throughout this league building momentum and carrying it into championship. I think we've really seen last year, if you look at it, Cork obviously getting to the All Ireland final, winning the league last year, Clare the year before. So it just does really show the value of the league currently.
That does, of course, and you see it in football as well. Like, you have to take these games seriously. Like, they're for someone in the squad, they're their debut, and their chance to put in, a shift in a Galway senior jersey. And I know they're saying it's a big fixtures program, a big games program, but every time you put on the county jersey, it's a huge privilege and huge honor for yourself and your family and your club, and the county. And I think every player wants to do it justice when they get out there. So these are all important games, and it's important that they represent themselves and their club and their community with pride, and get the most out of themselves. And I think every player is going out to do that. And the league is a great bedrock for any player starting out the season to, build their game and build their sharpness and build their confidence. So there's no one going out there not trying, and there's no one going out there with a poor attitude or poor preparation. Whether you're Pádraig Mannion or you're Killian Trayers, you want to get the best out of yourself and you want to be successful.
You mentioned Pork Mannion there, Dahi Burke, Tom Monaghan, Carl Mannion, even Conor Whelan and Brian Kincannon when they come back. Their role is really important now, isn't it, as the experienced players? And you could see it as well on Saturday night how important the role is going to be. I suppose guiding these lads at the start, but then when these younger players begin to establish themselves, they're still going to have a really important role as this year develops.
Yeah, like hugely when these young lads come into the squad, you'd hope that there's a really strong integration there in terms of how they're welcomed, and you're sharing best practice with them in terms of gym and gym exercises and the nutrition side of it and the recovery side of it, and working on the skills away from training, within training, and how you review your games and how you look at getting better in all aspects from, physical, mental, tactical, technical, and the lifestyle it leads to be, a really good, successful inter-county hurler. And these lads have done it and winning leagues and Leinster championships in All Ireland. So, they couldn't be learning off better, and you'd hope that they're, soaking all that up, and they're the behaviors around the environment that they're seeing and the role models they're seeing on and off the field, and the dedication they're seeing, and that filters through then if you have a really strong leadership group, living that and communicating that and showing that, and it spreads into the newer lads into the panel. Then you've a really healthy, competitive environment, and they're sharing with each other, and being positive with each other and encouraging each other and driving each other on and watching out for each other. There can be great learning between young and old, and inexperienced and experience from that context.
And finally, Tony, as we talked about that Cork game, it just really will show the management after this weekend maybe where they're at and what they need to work on, particularly with a 3 week block coming. Obviously, if University of Galway go all the way, they will be probably those players will begin to focus on a Fitzgibbon Cup, and even Derek Fahey is with UL as well. But that after this Cork game, they'll know where they're at, and they have sort of, I suppose, 3 weeks maybe to have a hard training block there when there is a break.
Yeah, absolutely. I think after two games, you'll have noticed some patterns from those two matches that you've been really strong on, and where the improvement areas, and then it'll give them that chance to do that bit of repair work and just strengthen different areas, whether it's putting in another fitness block or strength block there, as well as what's the skills block and the tactical technical block that will need to go into it as well. So yeah, I'm sure there's a plan there, both from a weekly point of view and a monthly point of view, to make sure the main areas are hit coming into your next phase of the league.
Great stuff, Tony. Thanks very much for your time this evening.
Thanks a million, Paul.
This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. In part two of the show, I'm now delighted to be joined by Denis Hurley from the Echo. Galway obviously hosting Cork this weekend in Pearse Stadium at 7 o'clock. The game live on TG Car. Denis, it's safe to say Ben O'Connor's reign couldn't really got off to a better start against Waterford at the weekend.
Hi Paul, yeah, thanks for having me on. It went very well. Yeah, I suppose when the teams were named, you kind of knew that a home win was a very very strong possibility, and that's the way it panned out. But even so, Ben O'Connor was still very happy with the performance and the way that Cork approached the task. I suppose there was no hint of complacency. They got on top right from the off. I think the first 10 shots they took were all points, and then they were up by 13 by half time, and that was kind of that was the outcome decided really. But no, very encouraging for a first outing. He kind of said afterwards, he was glad to have it out of the way because there'd been a lot of talk about it. Obviously, everyone's expecting a much different challenge now on Saturday night, but it'll be something, I suppose, that'll tell us more about Cork than last Sunday did.
325 to 117 winners over Waterford at the weekend. How easy was it for Cork, did you feel on Sunday? I suppose even there, as you mentioned, taking the first 9 or 10 shots, and you could just tell maybe they were obviously had a lot of a stronger team out than Waterford at the weekend.
Yeah, they did, and like they had 10 of the All Ireland team, and they'd only one debutant, whereas I think Waterford had four debutants. They were missing the Ballygunner lads first and foremost, and then they were missing other experienced guys. Then the likes of Tyke de Borca. It was a lot different from the Waterford team that was coming to the championship, and so no one was getting carried away. No one was reading too much into it. It was a very mature and professional kind of performance from Cork. Like if they hadn't been winning by double figures, you would probably have been a bit worried. But they did what they had to do. The half back line got on top right from the off, and they were able to supply good ball into the forwards. And you had Alan Connolly and Declan Dalton inside, along with William Buckley, who was the only debutant, but he's a guy who has a lot of experience, built up from playing at a high level with St. Finbarrs and with UCC. So, and Cork under 20s under Ben O'Connor a couple of years ago. So there was no fears about him, and he got 1-4. That was a big positive to take from it. So, I suppose you don't want to make it too simplistic, but basically Cork had better players out, and that kind of was seen from the off. They played very crisp and sharp hurling, and they used the ball well. And I suppose there was kind of a sense for the lads, the experienced lads, who it was the first match since the All Ireland final, and we've all heard about how that went. So I suppose there was probably a sense of wanting to respond strongly, and I'd say that will be the case throughout the year, really. There's probably a chip on fellas' shoulders. The Cork did win the Munster and the league last year, and then because of one admittedly disastrous half of hurling, they probably didn't get the credit for that. So I think there is a keenness to just show people like that one game doesn't define this Cork team, like.
Just as you mentioned it there, there was probably a relief in one sense, but I suppose for Cork to get back at the weekend after everything that happened after the All Ireland final. From your own perspective, with the obviously everyone knows about these dressing room rumors that happened after the All Ireland final and the All Ireland final in itself. What's that been like for you, I suppose, covering this Cork team in the aftermath of all of that?
Like in the one hand, you weren't getting too bogged down with it, because it was clear from the off that they were rubbish. So that's why none of it ever made it properly into print. Like you can imagine there's sections of the media who would only have been too happy to run with anything like that if there was a hint of truth in it. And like from talking to lots of people involved, it was clear that it was just one of these things that just, someone says it, and then people are always more inclined to believe the more salacious stuff than the boring truth. Like, so, like, there was that side of it. But then you were straight into the busy county championship season, and there wasn't really, things moved on very quick. Like, lads were back playing with their clubs, and no more than Galway. It's a very busy club championship season in Cork, so that took the focus straight away. So I think anyone who kind of had a clue about it, just moved on very quickly, and then you always get the empty vessels making a bit more noise. But it was kind of easy enough to block that out too. I think there had probably been a bit of disappointment that it wasn't nipped in the bud, maybe. But in saying that, then even if you do comment to say nothing happened, people would say, "Oh well, you're only just saying that to cover it up." So you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. But I think, the people who understood the situation, were able to kind of discount it fairly quickly and just get on with the actual important stuff.
Just even from going by on Sunday, you look at Darragh O'Leary, obviously came in at fullback, Tommy O'Connell in midfield, William Buckley, as you mentioned, and Declan Dalton on the edge of the square. Did you feel, I suppose, the positioning of those players? Did you feel it worked and it's something you could see in 2026?
Yeah, like there was a lot of positives. Everyone played well, really. Darragh O'Leary is a guy who was on the panel during Kieran Kingston's time. Like he played all through the league in 2022, and he was unlucky then just to get injured against Kilkenny in the final that year, or sorry, in the semi-final, and so he missed the final, and then he missed most of the rest of the inter-county season, and then he was just kind of unlucky then in 2024 as well, after kind of bouncing back. Injuries kind of caught him last year. Then he wasn't included in the panel. He was he was a trainee Garda, and he was in Templemore, and he was kind of away from the setup. So I think that was a big reason why the management didn't go with him. But like, he's a guy who has won county championship with McKilly. He's had success with his club, Watergrass Hill. He was on the same under-20 team as Kieran Joyce, that won the under-20 in 2021. So he's a guy with experience, and I suppose they're going to be looking at the full-back role, and there's an opportunity there maybe. So he's one of the fellas in the mix. Obviously, that's not writing off Owen Downey by any means, and there's other fellas who'll be looking to kind of make their mark there. But he was good on Sunday, but it's a very small sample size against a team that Cork were well on top of. Tommy O'Connell is he's kind of, I think he'll be 26 this year. So he's someone again who he started in the championship against Waterford in 2024. So he has a lot of experience too. So he's the guy who can come in and do a job. He's been excellent for Middleton at centre back the last 3 years in the county championship. Midfield is a place that I suppose is heavily contested in the Cork squad, but so is the half back line. So if anyone is going to make a breakthrough, they're going to have to really earn it. But again, he's a fella who his qualities are well known. He's not afraid of the physical stuff, but he can use the ball very well. And then Declan Dalton inside and full forward. It's kind of strange to see the reaction to that, as if it's a completely new thing when Cork put 6 goals past Clare in Ennis in the league last year, and he was playing inside there. He's played there often for his club. So again, it's not. Ben O'Connor was asked about it afterwards on Sunday, and he was almost surprised, I think, at the reaction, because he said, we're not doing anything special here. Like, he's played here before, and we know what he can do. And he's a guy who can win his own ball, and he has a good eye for goal, and he absolutely drilled the penalty. But I suppose what should be very encouraged with is that for the first goal, he could have taken a chance on himself from a tight angle, and he instead opted to play it across Alan Connolly for a lot easier chance. So there was a lot of teamwork like that. The third goal that William Buckley finished as well. That involved Alan Walsh creating a turnover, and then the ball falling to Alan Connolly, and he carried it on, and he had William Buckley on the shoulder, and he played him in for the pass. So that was something Ben was very happy with. That fellas were using their heads, looking for the man in the better position. He said, he wants to see fellas going, rather than going for their own 50% chance, looking up and seeing that there might be a fella better placed who might have a 70% chance. And it's just playing clever, intelligent hurling and doing what's best for the team, rather than being totally focused on their own scoring tally.
Do you think there's a pressure and an expectation on Ben O'Connor this year? Obviously, Galway Tip was the live game on RT, and Joe Canning and Liam Sheedy were talking about, I suppose, the pressure and expectation that could be on Ben O'Connor this year at Cork. Do you think it's on him straight away, or do you sort of think it's Ben O'Connor's team now and he has to be let sort of build it?
No, the pressure is on straight away, and he understands that. He said it himself, and he knows the score. Like, when you're managing Cork, that's just the nature of it. And when a team has won the league and won Munster, the All-Ireland is the next mountain to climb. And even before Cork had won those, after getting to the final in 2024, that was the expectation. Pat Ryan said it. that when he got the job, and he was probably being harsh maybe in that he said, that if he got, or if he didn't win the All Ireland in the 3 years, that'd be a failure, and that's just the nature of it. The expectations are always high in Cork, and you saw it last year. They won 2 trophies, but no one was saying it was a great year. It's just what anyone's going to be measured on, and Ben O'Connor understands that, and he's very committed, and he said he wants to win every match, and so you extrapolate that. You want to go out and win the league games, win the round robin in Munster, get to a Munster final, and then win the All Ireland. So no one is kind of hiding behind balls, lower expectations or anything like that. You have a team in there that have got it to All Ireland finals, so it's not like you need to come in and rebuild the whole team. There's only one player after retiring. Obviously, he is an excellent player, but that just creates a chance for someone else, and there's definitely the appetite and hunger in there to try and make up any shortfall in the scoring output that might result from that.
It's safe to say, Denis, Pearse Stadium is going to be a lot different to Super Value Porky Queeve was on Sunday compared to this Saturday now.
Yeah, it is, of course, and I think that's what they want. A proper chance maybe to evaluate fellas who are looking to kind of break into the Championship 15 or break into the 26. I think the 7-team league is good that way. When you have 2 teams being relegated, in that there's no gimmies really. You can't kind of target matches safe in the knowledge that you're going to pick up points elsewhere. Galway coming off a good performance against Tip, but not having got results, they're under a bit of pressure to get the win at home, and that means then that for Cork it's a chance to make it 2 wins from 2, pick up a really kind of morale boosting victory. And if you don't, then it means that there's fellas probably who haven't performed, whose places might be under threat then for the Tip game the following week. Everyone will want to play against Tip. They'll know that even Cork can beat Tip, and it won't kind of override the disappointment of the previous year, but it will be one, I suppose, that everyone will be kind of looking to perform for. So the Galway game, I'm not saying it's just a tee up for the Tip match, but in terms of the processes fellas go through, everyone will know that if you want to play well, or you want to play well against Galway to get the result and to make sure that you're still in the mix, because the competition for places is going to be strong all year. And Ben is the kind of fellow who won't let lads coast, or who kind of won't be able to view that fellas can take it easy in the league and it'll be grand come Championship, because anyone who does that won't be starting by the time Championship comes around.
What did you make of Galway last Saturday night against Tip?
It was encouraging, I suppose, in lots of ways, but I don't think anyone was going to Thurles for a moral victory, and the conditions were tough, but they're going to be tough in January, they're going to be tough in February, they're going to be tough in March. As we've seen, they can be tough in April for the Championship as well. So it's a match, I presume, Micheál Donoghue, he'll be taking a lot of positives from, but with the caveat that they were going down to Thurles to get 2 points and they didn't get them. And it wasn't a hammering, or it wasn't anything bad, but 5 points, I suppose, is still it's still a bit of a gap for a game that was fairly close all through. And obviously Dara Sakelam's goal was kind of the one to kind of help Tip to push on. But I suppose Galway will feel that having conceded that goal, you've been looking for a stronger response in the closing minutes, and it'll be a learning experience for them. It's tough, like when you're trying to kind of make the changes to get up to or get back to the level that they were at, but it's like the cliche about rebuilding a plane in midair, because like I said, with the 7-team league, you can't really you don't have a lot of breathing space to do that. Like if Cork were to win on Saturday night and then Galway are there with 2 losses from 2 games. It just gives you that extra little bit of pressure. When there's not a lot of opportunities, then you've 5 games left to try and get your, you're probably looking at 5 points being the minimum needed to not have any relegation worries. So if you're there with 2 losses from 2 games, you're kind of saying we have to get results in 3 of the next 5 matches, and that just ups the pressure again a little bit. So this week, when it is a quick turnaround, you're not going to get a chance to do a lot on the training ground. It's just recovery and then build straight up for it. So that's a challenge for Galway. Obviously, there's still a lot of top operators in there. Like Pádraig Mannion, Aaron Nyland, Dahi Burke. It's not a completely new team, but you're looking to kind of bring fellas up to the level with the Leinster Championship in mind, and looking to kind of put up more of a challenge to Kilkenny than they have done in the last couple of years.
It's important for Galway this weekend, as you mentioned in there's, I suppose, a lot of pats on the backs from supporters. That probably they were very impressed with the younger lads against Tipperary. But as you mentioned, it's to back it up now against Cork and get a victory. Because even if you look at Galway's league schedule, it's a bye in round 3, then it's Fitzgibbon Cup finals, and they're actually not back in action, I suppose, after the Cork game for 3 weeks. So important in that sense to get a victory this weekend and not be, I suppose, going into a 3-week break on 2 losses.
Yeah, that's it. Like that's what I was saying there. Like it's so cutthroat. Like, and it's such a quick turnaround. And if you did lose, if you did lose to Cork, the bye probably isn't what you want, because you're just kind of stewing over it. Whereas at least if Galway were to win, they're going to the bye with a bit of a bounce. And I know you might want to play again, but like at least then you have that time to kind of to kind of be working on things and building up. But like you said, then the Fitzgibbon impinges, and that's kind of that's a distraction, I suppose, every county manager would prefer to be able to do without, but it's the only place really the Fitzgibbon can be played. So it's the league is tough for all managers, and you just want to be ideally just kind of picking up results and integrating lads into your team, and ramping it up in time for championship. But it's never going to work out. Never going to work out perfectly. So I think from that point of view, against the Galway team, that will be kind of well up for it. That's why I think Cork will really be relishing the challenge on Saturday.
I know it's early in the year, but from the outside looking in, where do you see Galway going this year, or what could you see them achieving?
It is really very hard to say. It's clear like that the last couple of years have been well short of what Galway fans would be expecting and hoping for. Like even that quarter final against Tip in Limerick last year, there was never really a sense that Tip weren't going to win that match. And I suppose that was probably the worrying thing, especially after a year when they didn't get out of Leinster. And you can look at it as a bit of progress that way. But I think, like Cork, the expectations are always high. Kilkenny have won the last 5 Leinsters without it really being a massive achievement for them, if that makes sense. Especially when you consider that they haven't been in either the last 2 All-Ireland finals. Like, it's been all Munster affairs. The last 6 Leinsters Kilkenny have won, and Galway have only been in 4 of those 6 finals. So it's it's a big leap, I suppose, to make to think that they could be to get from where they were the last couple of years to be challenging for an All-Ireland. I suppose Tip showed last year that it's not necessarily something you can rule out, but I think if you're being realistic, you're probably looking for Galway to get to the Leinster final and to be in a position to properly challenge Kilkenny for it. And then to do that, you're saying probably a strong league is needed. And so you're saying you need to get the points on the board early, and you've one game down, you've lost. So the whole match is obviously going to be important, and from that point of view, then a win is probably something they need on Saturday night.
What sort of a game do you expect on Saturday night?
I suppose, like always the case with Salt Hill, I suppose the weather will determine a lot of it. Um, if the storm has passed, a hurling match might break out, but you'd be thinking maybe it'll be more similar to Galway and Tip than it was to Cork and Waterford, probably. And I think it'll probably depend on how it's refereed, and as well, the last thing you want is a kind of a battle, a kind of groundhog battle, and there's lots of frees been given, and it just turns into a kind of a free scoring contest, and then maybe decided by a goal or two here or there. Like, we'd all like to see a kind of an open game like the one in Salt Hill 2 years ago. I think was there 6 or 7 goals scored that day. But it's I suppose very hard to say. Ben O'Connor, he said he'd like to play classy hurling, but it's not always the case, and ultimately it's about getting the win, and it'll come down to the conditions, I think, determining a lot of that.
Do you think Cork will change much up in regards to starting 15 then for this weekend, or how do you see them lining out this weekend?
I think there will be a good few changes, all right, yeah, because there was a few of the more established names who missed out last weekend just with kind of minor injuries, and they could be back in the mix. And then as well, you have MTU and UCC playing at Fitzgibbon quarterfinals on Wednesday night with a good lot of Cork lads involved. So, the management have to be cognizant of not overloading guys that way. So I would think maybe kind of 4 or 5 changes, and I would think that'll be kind of the way it'll be throughout the league, because they do have a strong squad. Maybe the problem is that you've a lot of fellas around a similar level. But it's something that'll be used to their advantage while they're assessing fellas, and just being able to make changes, not completely changing the team from week to week, but just to altering it while still being able to put out a strong team in every match.
There were a couple of interesting matchups in this one, Dennis. You could potentially maybe see Dybert go back to fullback if Declan Dalton is on the edge of the square. Gavin Lee obviously played midfield. Maybe he's someone who could match up with Darragh Fitzgibbon. And then interesting to see what Cork do. Obviously, we've seen Jason Rabbit really impressed the last day at full forward for Galway as well.
Yeah, yeah. And like you say, it's hard to know really until you see the teams are named. Like, it's yeah, like Dalton a full forward. I think that might be something that'll only be tried on occasion. I wouldn't see it. I could be very wrong, but I wouldn't see him being there throughout the league. And he's someone who's just as comfortable at in the half forward line. Again, Cork, like, I think neither Leary and Sean O'Donoghue, like, funnily enough, are considered the first go-to guys in terms of the man marking. So you probably see one of them picking up Rabbit. Neither Leary was excellent at the weekend, again, with the caveat that Waterford's forwards was far from the first choice setup, and Darragh Fitzgibbon and Tommy O'Connell did link very well in midfield. Yeah, so I think kind of stopping Fitzgibbon impacting with his forward runs will be something definitely that Micheál Donoghue will be looking at.
How do you see the game going on Saturday night?
Without knowing the teams, it's hard to say, but I'd be giving Cork maybe a slight edge without wanting to sound biased. I think just it'll probably be an experienced team out, because they'll be looking to get the challenge that Galway will bring, and I think just with the bit of confidence from last week, I think they'll be looking to keep up the momentum.
But obviously, as you mentioned there, there's a good amount of obviously Cork fellas involved in the Fitzgibbon. Same when it comes to Galway as well. Um, as recording the University of Galway play Setchi Waterford tonight in the Fitzgibbon Cup quarter-final. Involvement as well for Derek Fahy, the Galway goalkeeper, and with Joel tomorrow night against GCC. Just on the decision there yesterday to move the Fitzgibbon Cup finals into Crow Park this year. Do you feel it's the correct decision?
Yeah. I think everyone's happy with it. It had been kind of mentioned, all right, or early in the year that it was something that probably would happen. And sure, every player wants to play in Croke Park, and fair enough, a lot of fellas involved in the Fitzgibbon and the Sigerson will play there with their counties. But you do have guys playing Fitzgibbon who won't actually become county regulars as well, and it's a big thing for them. Like I was lucky enough, my own club were involved in the All Ireland Junior Club hurling final there a couple of weeks ago, and it brought such a buzz to the area. I know obviously college teams are that bit different, but it's still a huge honour for any player, especially when there's such important silverware on the line. And it'll be interesting to see if this becomes a regular thing or if it's something maybe that happens every few years. But I think when it's the first time in 40 years, it's definitely something that's overdue for competitions that are so prestigious and that matter so much to players and the colleges.
It's still very hard to look past UL for this Fitzgibbon Cup, isn't it, Dennis?
It
Like
is, yeah,
you
yeah.
will be
Like
shocked if they don't win it.
yeah, like UCC are going up there now on Wednesday night, having lost at home to MTU and then responded well by winning away to Garda. But it's the toughest draw any team could ask for in the quarterfinals. Like you mentioned Derek Fahy in goal for UL. Like UL also have Daniel O'Connell, who was the Cork under 20 goalkeeper last year, and he's actually their third choice. Which just shows how difficult a team it is to break into. Like it obviously you couldn't manage it logistically or anything, but you'd love to see how a full strength UL would shape up against the top county team, like in a match that matters, like because they have so many top players everywhere, like such a deep squad, like that. It's just very hard to see past them.
Great stuff, Dennis. Thanks very much for your time today.
All right, thanks, a lot, Paul.